Hi everyone, thank you very much for tuning in to the Journey of a Woman in Tech. It's Elly Greaney here, and we are extremely happy today to have Natasha Sayce-Zelem on the show, who is the Head of Technology within Digital Services at Sky.
Hi there.
Hello.
Thank you so much for having me.
No, you're more than welcome. I'm glad we could finally get you in. Natasha's a big personality within the tech scene in the North, so we're really pleased to have her on board and tell us all about her journey. So, Natasha, if you can start off by telling us a little bit about your current role and what you're up to at Sky at the moment.
Hey, cool. So I am one of the heads of technology at Sky in Leeds.
Amazing.
I look after their amazing digital service estate. So we build all of the products and services to make sure that our customers get the most out of their Sky accounts. So from their bills and if they're managing their packages and services, all the way through to getting the most out of their account. So the help area of the estate. It's a lot of fun.
Big role as well, I imagine.
Yeah, I mean, I have the most incredible department, and I would say that. But, you know, I'm surrounded by incredibly clever, wonderful people who it's just a joy to work with.
Fantastic.
And we get to work on really cutting edge things. Like in our area, we've got chatbots, which is conversational UI, which we're using across the estate. And yeah, it's a really, really great place to work as well.
Fantastic. And how long have you been at Sky for now?
I think it's about 4 years now.
Wow. Okay.
So I joined Sky from the BBC, and I was pretty much one of the first people on the ground, working with my old boss, Matt Grest, who effectively set up Sky here in Leeds.
Yes, I remember way back when, and it was all going on down at the docks in Leeds.
I know. And it was such an amazing kind of journey of being kind of brought here to Leeds and effectively hiring a team from scratch. So we hired something like, I think it was 350 brand new roles within a year.
Wow.
And then, you know, putting Leeds on the map with Sky, going out to meetups, sharing people, you know, our journey of what we were trying to do at Sky and Leeds, create a real
and that
technical...
was done superbly as well. It was
Why,
it was
you.
a really successul piece of work that you did there. So that's amazing. So how many people are you responsible for at Sky at the moment then?
I think it's between sort of 70, 80 people now, which is really cool. And I've kind of bounced around departments as well. So I first started in digital trading, so the e-commerce side, and now I've gone to digital service, so the customer service side. So it's really nice kind of going full circle. And that's one of the great things about working at Sky is there are so many opportunities internally to bounce around and try something new.
Amazing. And that's what you need over your career, isn't it? To be able to try different things. And you've definitely done that.
Wow.
So if you can tell us then, I guess, a bit of a summary about your journey into tech, because your journey it's been quite unique, hasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I genuinely think I have had the most ultimate fun mixtape of a career.
Good for you. That sounds great.
Yeah. I think it is. I think a mixtape is the best way to approach it, or it really is, I suppose, a choose your own adventure. Do you remember those books, Choose Your Own Adventure?
Yeah.
And so you'd kind of effectively get this book, and it would at the bottom kind of go, look, you know, turn to page 12 if you think you should go into the woods, and go to page 16 if you think you should go into the maze, and then you go to 16 and go, oh, I died at the end of that, so go back. No, I actually meant 12. I meant 12. And so I started as a photographer, working in music, so working for magazines like The Melody Maker, which was really exciting. I loved music, and I was no good as a musician. My piano and my guitar skills.
The enthusiasm was there.
Yeah, exactly. I loved music, and I wanted to be around music and musicians, but as not a very unsuccessful musician myself, I gravitated towards photography. And I loved being a photographer. I loved being in the pit. You have 3 songs usually to take the photo, which is the photo when you're at the gig and you look at it and you go, that was the gig for me. Yeah. And so you had to be really good under pressure. You'd have maybe crowd surfers coming behind you. You know, the artist would be moving around. The lighting condition might not be right. Yeah. And you've got to try and work under those kind of tolerances to effectively get the photo.
What a fun environment to work in. Yeah. Pulling that work is pretty good, isn't it?
It was pretty good. And I mean, like, you know, I got to hang out with loads of cool people and see bands on their way up. So I used to know Muse before they were famous. And bands like Coldplay, because they used to support Muse, Soulwax again because they used to support Muse. So you'd kind of all these bands which were on their way up, and
you got to follow them around.
Yeah, exactly, and spend some time with them, which was nuts.
And was that based in Leeds then?
I lived in London for a bit.
Okay.
So I was
Where are you
kind
from
of
originally?
Leeds.
Oh, right. So you're from back home now.
So I am a Leeds girl. So I was a photographer, and then I got into film and television. So I did a degree in film at the Northern Film School here in Leeds.
Right.
And then started working in film and TV. And then had sort of a kind of sliding doors moment. I used to enter competitions online. I'd heard somebody that lived near us that was doing it, and I had a bit of time on my hands, so I started, going on to sort of like main websites, there's like forums to show you how to do these things. And within, I think, the first month, I'd won £1,000 with Channel 5. And I was like, well, this is brilliant.
So it's just like those competitions at the end of the TV show where it says like, and it's always like, send your letter to Derby.
Exactly. And so you just go and buy some postcards. Because there's always like usually a free option, so there's like, the call this number and pay £1. Or if you go to this website, or if you send this postcard in, you've still got an equal chance of winning. And so, I did really, really well. So I won 9 holidays.
Wow.
So I'd won a holiday to Australia and to Thailand, which made me get out of film and TV. And then I ended up coming back from holiday and getting a job working for Yorkshire Forward, a local government agency, which unfortunately doesn't exist anymore. And worked in their science and innovation department, learning huge amounts about sort of STEM and working with universities and companies in the region. And through that, ended up doing loads of digital stuff. And I'd always been massively into tech. I was a coder when I was a kid. I was massive ZX Spectrum, BBC Micro geek. And I'd learnt to code through that and through university. And with kind of working on websites for Yorkshire Forward, I realised I really wanted to continue doing this. And so the rest, they say, is history. I sidestepped into a job working at a full service agency on their digital side.
Great.
Did a few more agency gigs, and then went to the BBC, and then went to Sky.
Fantastic. Amazing. And the rest is history. So fantastic to hear about your journey, particularly with it being quite unique in your background. It sounds like you've had a lot of fun along the way. What challenges do you think you faced during that journey then?
It's a really tricky question to answer even.
Because at the time you probably just deal with it, so you probably don't see it as a challenge. But I think looking back now, it's good to talk around like different scenarios and how you've overcome them, because people will be living those things right now.
One of the biggest challenges I think I faced is I worked with a really difficult boss at one of the agencies.
Right.
And in hindsight, I put up with it for far too long, and because of, I guess, my imposter syndrome, when I was kind of in my 20s, one of the first sort of gigs that I got in technology, I thought it was me and not him. And I think I was far too much into pleasing and thinking like if I worked harder, if I tried harder, then, maybe he'd respect me a lot more. And then in hindsight, he was just a chauvinistic guy, and I got myself out of that situation quite quickly.
That comes with maturity as well, right? When you're younger, like you say, you just want to please everyone, you want to do the best job, you want to work extra hard to show him, her, whoever that you can do it. But I think when you're a bit older and you've kind of done that a few times, you think it's not worth it, is it? Someone else will respect and love what I can bring to the table, so if they don't, then we'll find someone else that will. Exactly.
And I think that quitting, especially in technology, you can find a job really quickly. And I think that at the time I was more scared of what the consequences would be, instead of taking myself out of what was a really toxic situation for me and other females who had to work with them. And I think that that's one of the biggest challenges that I think I faced, especially younger, is not understanding that certain behaviours were not acceptable.
Yes.
And I think that now we're much more aware as a kind of a wider community of not letting these things keep happening.
Yeah, not letting things slip and pulling up people on certain behaviours.
Exactly, especially with the sort of old bro cultures which kind of existed. So I think that's certainly one of the challenges that I experienced. And I think, the other thing is self-confidence, especially, being honest, of going to kind of more leadership roles. I think I psyched myself out of roles for ages and not throwing my hat into the ring.
Yes.
Because I didn't think that I was experienced enough, or I would do the typical looking at the JD and going, look, I can't do these things, but I can do these things. And because I couldn't do all 10 that they asked for, I wouldn't throw my hat in. And then...
What changed when you finally started heading towards more of a leadership role? What do you think? I guess it's interesting to find out what you think changed with yourself, where you thought, actually, no, now I'm ready. Or was it someone that helped you, or someone supported you and pushed you for it?
I think you have to realise with job descriptions, is there a suggestion?
Yeah.
Right now,
wish list.
They're a wish list, but they're a suggestion based on what we think at the time when we're writing that job description. And when you actually go into the role, it's very rare that I do even 70% of what the job description has asked for, because I come with without sounding like Liam Neeson from Taken, I come with a very unique set of skills, and these skills are, I do have unique skills that I bring to it, from the fact that I have a very, curious background before I got into tech. And those are strengths. And ultimately, we're not hiring a job description. The job description isn't going to do any work for us. We're hiring incredibly talented and unique people with, from different backgrounds, different experiences. Those strengths come out, and then we realise that they fill gaps that we didn't even know existed. Yeah,
I think that's what I do. Obviously in my job, I help people find new jobs all the time, and I make it really clear that when I'm working with my clients, that you are not sort of hiring an application. It's not a piece of paper, it's a person. And as much as probably half of my clients are going to kill me when they watch this, I say, I'll take a quick look at the JD, but I don't really follow them too much, because my job and the way that I work, I've been doing this a long time now, I know what I'm doing, and I'll work with my client, speak to them, find out what they really need. I'll push the boundaries sometimes when I think they might need something else, and I'll be a little bit cheeky, but that is how that you end up being a really successful recruiter and helping people find their dream jobs, because they're not on paper, they're not always perfect at all. And most of the time, a lot of the candidates more recently as well that I work with, they're not on paper, they're not the right person, or the client doesn't know they need to hire this person. But when you push them to sort of go for the opportunity and have a chat with someone, they often find out they need something completely different. But the pressure when you're hiring, say you've got, I'm sure you must have had this initially when you were hiring at Sky as well, and you had 350 vacancies.
Yep.
It's tough to really put down what you need when you've got how many different job descriptions to write, and obviously it's really important, but equally at the same time, writing a JD as a hiring manager isn't always your sort of most urgent requirement, is it? When you've got a team, you've got to keep live, you've got to keep running, and you've got to start interviewing, which is even more trickier, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think going into that leadership role, I realised that I could just take a leap.
Yeah.
And Grace Hopper, who's an incredible sort of role model in tech, she had like a really great quote that she said that ships are safe at port, but that's not what ships were designed to do. And I think that I get to a point where you can't be safe. If you can swim nice and easily, then you need to go into a bigger pool for a bit and give yourself a bit of challenge. And sometimes you might be struggling a bit, to find your stride, and then you'll start swimming again.
But that's the beauty of it, isn't it? When you push yourself, when you challenge yourself, that's when you really achieve great things that you didn't know you could do. You push the boundaries and you're ready for the next step and the next step.
And I think that's the thing, is that once I did it once and then started leaping off bigger, sort of diving boards into deeper pools, you enjoy it. And I think it's, you've just got to take that leap and believe in yourself and know that the next challenges will be just as exciting or even more so than the ones you've already encountered.
And your husband, he works in tech as well.
He is a web designer. Amazing. And I pretty much credit me getting into tech probably off the back of him, because
I'm sure he wouldn't say off the back of him. With his support, you got into tech.
Well, I think it is,
and probably a bit of a push sometimes.
I think so, and kind of effectively telling me that I could do it. But he is a web designer, and he's been in the industry for like God knows how many years. He's really old. And,
He's going to love this.
Yeah. But when I got into the industry, when we get into technology, we don't realise the fact that we speak our own language. We talk about agile and ceremonies and stand-ups and retrospectives.
And make it sound like it's the norm. It's
yeah,
the norm.
exactly.
What are we talking about?
Ruby and React and, the list goes on. And we don't realise we are speaking, a lingo, which people, when they're first coming in, don't fully understand.
Yeah.
And so then things like imposter syndrome and, self-limiting beliefs come in. And I was incredibly lucky to have this amazing guy who would be able to effectively translate this stuff for me and explain how things worked, explained how, programming languages differed. And so that I could go home and safely go, look, what does this mean and what does that mean? And for him to kind of give me the support when I needed it, when I kind of was a bit hard on myself. And it's also really nice when we can go home and talk shop together and geek out about new things coming up in the industry. So I'm really lucky to have someone like that.
Yeah, that's really nice. Although I imagine you don't have so much time for that now because you've got 2 children, is that right?
We do.
How
We've
old are
got
your
2 girls.
Oh, lovely.
I have a 5-year-old and a 1-year-old.
Wow.
And so the 1-year-old is pretty much now she's probably been to more conferences than many females already.
Good, you take her with you.
Yeah, well, this is such a really crazy story. I was pregnant with Georgia, my youngest, and I run this network outside of work called Empowering Women with Tech.
I've been to some of the events and they are fantastic if anyone is interested in going.
And I was doing an event for Ada Lovelace Day, nearly 2 years ago now, and I was due the week later.
Wow.
So I was very heavily pregnant, and...
So you were running this big event whilst being heavily pregnant?
Yeah, and still at work.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And... So it was in the evening, and I still had a week in the bag, and I was feeling quite cocky and felt like I still did it. No one told you
usually seconds come a bit sooner.
Yeah, well, exactly. And I hadn't seen it coming. And so the day before, I realised that I might be kind of going into labour.
Oh my God.
And, I was just playing it down and thought, no, I'd rung
this
up the
is
hospital.
pure commitment to the community here.
Yeah, well, and long story short, I went into labour about, I was taken into the hospital at midnight. I gave birth at 3 a.m. I just, because I hadn't had time to hand anything over, I discharged myself from hospital at 12 noon. First thing we did with box fresh baby in the back is go to the printers to pick up the stuff for the event.
Oh my gosh.
Got home, had an interview with BBC Radio Leeds at 4:00 whilst breastfeeding my daughter on the telephone. And at 6:00, I managed to go to the event for an hour just to make sure everything was okay. And it was so funny because I still had...
so insane.
I know. It genuinely is probably one of the most foolish things I've done. But it was so funny because I still had a belly after giving birth. And so people kind of going, look, when are you due? And I was like, I gave birth this morning. And they were like,
no! Oh my
and they were just like, ha 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 ha. I was like, no, really. And they were like, no.
That is insane.
And then it kind of like went around like wildfire at the event, and they were just like, you're crazy. And I was like, well, I just needed to check everything was okay.
And then you
went
took
back.
some time off?
Yeah, I went home, and then baby was just as brilliant and sleeping away.
How long did you take off with Georgia?
I took off, I think, about 8 or 9 months with Georgia, and then I took a year off with Eliza.
Lovely.
And it was great, and so Empowering Women with Tech kept me going, so I still kept doing... I did another event whilst I was on maternity leave.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, it's keeping you involved in everything, keep yourself stimulated away from the baby, although that's pretty stimulating, isn't it? I can imagine having a baby right now, the stress.
I think once you have number 2, it's... You know what's going to happen. You've been through this before. It's still an adventure, but it's a lot more enjoyable and a lot more relaxing because you know what you're doing the second time round.
You've done it. You've aced it already, so you don't have the worry factor, do you?
Oh, number 2 is the do-over. So everything you've done wrong on the first one, number 2 is version 2. But so that is genuinely probably one of the most silly things I've ever done. But we managed to get it the event was a great success.
Wow.
Since the baby.
Amazing. And the baby's beautiful. So we're all okay. Okay. What about the challenges faced by the next generation and what we can do to help support them?
So it's a crazy one. So I think I would answer that two ways. I think for the next generation coming up, so kind of school leavers, universities, it is about having a more diverse range of role models that they can see. I've said this a few times. I would love a character in Hollyoaks or EastEnders to be a female coder or a female digital project manager.
Yeah.
I'd love Strictly Come Dancing to have someone like Sue Black as one of the contestants, so that we get these role models much more into the mainstream, and so people can be what they want, to become.
So it's visible, it's relatable, it's fantastic. I mean, I agree.
I've talked about it a few times. I was actually out with Becca this week to see the 1975 on Monday. She is a lawyer in Leeds, an incredible lawyer, and she got into law because of Ally McBeal. And
Really?
This role model that she saw on the TV, and you kind of saw all facets of what she did as a lawyer on the show, and it inspired her to go, right, that's actually what I want to do. Hopefully she doesn't dance with an imaginary baby, though I haven't asked her. But that's kind of what you need is, I wanted to be out, in the music industry or the film and TV industry because I'd seen role models that were doing that role. So how do we get more visible role models for those next generation of people coming up? But I think also around the next generation, I'd also look at people who could sidestep into the industry or could return into the industry.
Yes.
I think there's a really great opportunity to get more returners into tech. So men and women who've had to leave the industry for a number of reasons, whether they've had to have a career break, and then
family illness,
for whatever reason. And so I'm really proud that Sky do a returners program, and what it is about getting these people with amazing life experience and giving them a full-time job and the training that they need, a paid returners job to get back into the industry.
Fantastic.
So we're running that across the country, but we run that here in Leeds. So if anyone listening knows somebody or is wanting to get back into the industry, get in touch with Sky for their returners program.
Fantastic. Yeah, that's really great. And it'd be good as well, I guess, from your perspective, I might be putting you on the spot here, about like the different roles that they can try out on the Get Into Tech program, and also like the most interesting story of like, if you had someone that, I remember someone saying the other day about someone who was like a lighthouse manager or something like that went into tech, but anyone that's got a particularly interesting sidestep. That's good.
So we also run the Get Into Tech program at Sky. So it's an absolutely free 3-month coding course for women to train up. And I think one of the best things about the Get Into Tech scheme is that we have so many women who come out of it, and they, I think we've had over 600 women have done the course across Leeds, Livingston and London. Yeah. And from that, 1 in 4 of those women now work in Sky in our technology department.
Fantastic.
But, it's people who felt that, that ship has sailed for them. Yeah. For a number of us, when I was at school, there wasn't roots into technology. I remember being really interested in getting into games development because I was a massive gamer, I still am. And my careers advisor at school telling me, look, there's no roles for that here in the UK, you'd have to go to America. And that's pretty much what you were told. And this was, before like powerful internet days. So, you just effectively listened to the advisor and went, oh, okay then. Yeah. And so, what you found with Getting to Tech is these women who've had so much self-belief to go, do you know what, it's not too late for me. Yeah. I've got loads of transferable skills. I just need somebody to believe in me and give me that training.
The opportunity.
Yeah, and so we've had teachers, we've had a university professor.
Oh, wow.
Like somebody I used to work with used to be a marine biologist and sidestepped into tech. And so I think that's really exciting because they're just bringing all of this amazing transferable skills from different sectors, and it makes working in tech so fascinating.
And there's so many, even if you think that now back to your background though in photography, there's so many skills that you will have learnt back then that you're still using on a day-to-day basis now? It's the same principles, it's just transferring them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think with photography, it was being calm under pressure and being able to problem solve. Like, for any geeky photographers listening, we would be shooting back then in film, and, you know, some artists would say, like, you're not allowed flash photography, and the lights were really dark or the lights are really red, which is not useful if you're shooting on film, because it can burn the film.
Right.
And so you'd have to kind of effectively look at the lights and problem solve and think of like what on earth you were going to do to fix
get
this.
photo
Yeah, exactly.
To get paid.
Yeah, exactly. To not lose your job. And then working in film and TV, the more and more I realised it, the more and more now, in hindsight, we worked in effectively an agile way. Working on Emmerdale, we worked in effectively sprints. We'd kind of work in 2-week filming blocks, and we had to get a set number of scenes in the can. Right. If the weather was inclement, or an actor was ill, we'd have to problem solve and think of what other scenes we could film that day. So we still got what we needed to get done. You work with a crew, so no different to software development, working in teams. So you have all of the things around communication, about stakeholder management, influencing and negotiation skills. So moving into technology, those skills are completely transferable.
Yeah, of course.
But then I also have an extra string to my bow of understanding a different sector. So the fact that I, after working in film and TV, have ended up working for BBC and for the Sky, which are broadcast companies, I have a huge amount of sort of transferable knowledge of actually, some of the other challenges from a production basis, which are really useful to having an understanding of the wider spectrum.
I can imagine, definitely. Fantastic. What about your greatest achievement today, then? Sounds like you've had some pretty big ones.
Gosh, my greatest achievement. I know it's really corny, but my family and my kids, my 2 daughters literally colour my life in every way imaginable.
So lovely.
They are just so funny, and it's such a ride. It really is. You kind of...
tell us about it. You said you didn't get much sleep last night.
No, I know. I have a 5-year-old and a 1-year-old, and the 1-year-old is teething at the moment. So I had loads of preparation for this podcast at about 3 a.m. this morning, practicing what I was going to say and to try and cue Georgia to sleep. But no, genuinely, I'm so incredibly proud of my children. They're incredible. I thought about this really earnestly, and one of the greatest things that I'm proud to have had some little part in is when I got engaged. So me and my husband, I met my husband on my 18th birthday party. He wasn't my husband then, but so we've been together for, it's 18 odd years now.
Yeah, wow.
And he proposed to me after 10 years, and it was kind of a bit of a joke that after a while everybody was laughing at the fact he was dragging his feet for so long, and he would joke.
The same to her.
Yeah, well, no, exactly right. And we kind of did the right thing. We did the whole travelling and buying the house. It was never a priority for us for ages.
It was a priority for me. I wanted a ring.
No, I know, right? Beyonce put it right, and so when he finally proposed, it was great, and we had like a big engagement party at the Adelphi. And we went from the Adelphi to Smokestack to have a bit of a boogie, and we were walking out the Adelphi, and there was kind of a crowd of people around Leeds Bridge, and there was a guy stood on the bridge, and he's incredibly upset, and some people are trying to talk to him, and I think we kind of, I don't know why, but I ran straight over, and I think my husband was on the phone to the police, and they already knew what was happening, and they were sending somebody, and I was just talking to him, and this was kind of before kids, and I was trying to empathise and understand what was going through his mind. He was obviously very, very upset. There's immense
pressure on yourself at that point, isn't there, to get it right and to...
Yeah, at that moment, I just thought, what can I do to help?
Yeah.
And so he'd evidently had an incredibly traumatic experience that day, and trying to empathise and find some way of getting him down and caring for him. And I'd watched Super Nanny, I think, this TV show the day before, because somebody was raving about it, and I kind of eventually just went, right, now come down here this instant, because I want to give you a hug. Now come down now. And then he came off the bridge. And I remember within a split second, it was like this whoosh moment where there's loads of police officers just came towards us. And I'm not exaggerating where I didn't hear any of them. I didn't hear them coming. I didn't even know they were behind me because I had
you were so tuned in.
I was just looking at that gentleman and talking to him and helping him, and I was just completely zoned out from everything else. And
well done you. Thanks so much. It's amazing, isn't it? And I'm sure he's extremely thankful for
you. And it was so that sticks out as something I'm incredibly proud of. Other things of just like empowering women with tech, getting that off the ground.
So where are you at now then with empowering women with tech? You've been running it for 3 years now, would you say?
Yeah,
okay,
so
fantastic.
Effectively I just realised that there was a real gap in kind of showcasing amazing role models in STEAM or STEM up here in the north of England, but also to get different role models there. Yes. So to really kind of question what a woman in tech is. Yeah. So, from having female tech recruiters through to content managers, to social media, to coding, to testing, to product ownership, and to show these a variety of role models in STEM or STEAM up here in the north of England, because a lot of these events previously were down in London or international, and for many that's not achievable to go and visit those events. So we started very small, with only an event for 375 people, and we did like a big one-dayer at the Armories as part of the international festival. We had speakers like Lauren Laverne, fashion blogger.
I remember that one because I had a ticket and I couldn't go on the day because I think I had loads of jobs coming. Yes, I do remember.
So we had, so Lauren Laverne, I managed to convince her to talk about The Pool, which was a website she founded, which was incredible. Susie Bubble, who's a fashion blogger, to talk about how she got into that. Through to Dr. Sue Black, talking about her journey into computer science. Anne-Marie Miffordin from the Stimettes. It was. Yeah,
I do remember. I was a bit gutted. I can get that day. Yeah.
And so we founded that, and then realised that mentoring was a massive gap that people had identified that they needed support with. So we set up a mentoring scheme, and 101 women now are in the mentoring scheme. We're just about to open it up again for 2020.
Oh wow!
And they're mentored by men, female. Mentors who are in the region. So like the biggest thing I'd really shout about is the fact we get so many females who would love a mentor, and we have so few mentors to pair them up with. So if anybody listening, if you've ever considered being a mentor, it doesn't necessarily need to be that you're at the top of your the ladder. People want mentors at all stages of the career path. So people who've just got into tech.
Different perspective,
isn't it?
So
we've got, people looking for a mentor of somebody who's just got into tech through to, let's say, leadership. So, so that's kind of like the next sort of big bow is more events. So I'm really, really curious about doing an event around femtech.
Okay.
So female tech. So that's probably a sneak surprise of kind of what's coming up for 2020 is something around femtech, and also about getting some of the titans of tech up here to Leeds as well, to hear from them. So watch this space.
Amazing. Well, we might have got a bit of an exclusive info. What about your greatest role model?
Oh my lord. So I think there's definitely not one.
Yeah.
I think I have loads of different role models that I look up to for so many different reasons. A lady I'm completely in awe of is Carol Cadwalla. She is a journalist, and people might know her for exposing the link between Facebook and Cambridge Analytica.
Right.
She is the most incredible, fearless and brave journalist, and if you seen it, she has an incredible TED Talk online. I'd implore you to watch that. People like Gina Miller, through to people who are doers. I'm a doer, and I really relate to other doers. So I'm hugely in awe of Dr. Jess Wade, who realised that loads of women don't have Wikipedia pages. It's very male heavy. So she was going to do something about it. So she's written over 900 Wikipedia entries for prominent females in science and technology.
That's amazing. I love that.
You know, and she's just incredible and heavily just promotes other women and to make sure that we have people we can see and learn about their amazing achievements. Through to my friend Fran, for example, she lives in Bramley and is earnestly doing loads of things to try and make Bramley a better place. Yeah. So from volunteering at the Elderly Action Group and getting people at the Elderly Action Group onto Twitter and Facebook and teaching them about social media, to she's recently been trying to crowdfund buying a local pub to turn it into a community pub where there would be effectively classes and meeting spaces and to create a real sense of community.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, and like
I want to live in Franstown.
I know, right? Everybody needs a Fran in their borough. But to people like Sue Black and Anne-Marie Miffordon, who have done huge amounts to effectively build up the profile of women in STEM and to put a spotlight onto companies and organisations to really embrace diversity and inclusion in tech. And my mum and dad for teaching me the power of culture. They loved film, they loved music, and I think that's why I'm so passionate about the fact it should be STEAM and not STEM, because the arts are so heavily in what we do, and I'm a massive fan of all of that, so I'm very proud to be their daughter because they've taught me so much.
That's amazing. Do you still do your photography now?
I do a little bit as a hobby. For ages I couldn't go to a gig and without feeling like I was missing an arm by not taking photos. Yeah.
But it must be quite nice to now actually be able to enjoy it rather than like, do you know what I mean, when you're all working you're not concentrating on the actual music.
Yeah, but it's kind of equally when somebody does something amazing on stage and you're just like, damn it,
that would have been a great shot.
Exactly, right?
You're still in that mindset.
Yeah, and I think what I've just enjoyed now is doing stuff outside of work which gets me out of my comfort zone again. So I've never curated events before I did Empowering Women, and suddenly
you threw yourself in the deep end with a pretty big one for
exactly. And it was just like I never approached speakers. I never, I then had huge scary moments of like, are people actually going to turn up? I think they're really cool speakers to somebody else. And then you realise that doubt kills more dreams than failure ever will, and by doing that, I've brought these absolutely badass speakers up here to Leeds, and people have talked about the fact of how much it's changed their outlook of what technology looks like as an industry, and for those people who've come up to Leeds, for many of the speakers, it's the first time they've ever been up to Leeds, and so they go back to wherever they
it's nice to be able to show off about our city, isn't it?
Yeah,
and see how fantastic it is.
And I think I'm really lucky as well that we've, as a city, it seems like we're so brilliant at getting that sort of digital culture and that digital community off the ground. As one of my hobbies, I run this thing on Twitter called Leeds Digital, which is about championing meetups in the city. And like we have like 69 meetups that happen regularly here in the city, and nearly all of them are free to attend. So from your podcasting meetup that you've set up, through to Empowering Women, through to the Wild Girls, or DevOps Leeds, Leeds JavaScript, WordPress Leeds, Agile Yorkshire, you name it, and there'll be a meetup there.
Yeah, of course. And if there's not, there's probably someone that would help you start it up as well.
Exactly, and I think that that's one of the most amazing things about the city is that it is has such a phenomenal grassroots community, and that's what makes working in the sector so exciting, is that we genuinely care and we lift as we climb.
There's a lot of proud people, isn't there, I think, in Leeds that want to get involved in, like you say, there's a lot of doers here that want to get stuck in and put their hands up and get involved. So I think that's I think you're definitely right, there's loads of amazing things to be a part of there. And you left us there with some words of wisdom as well. Is there anything else that you'd like to kind of end the podcast on?
For ages, I wouldn't do something like this, like a podcast, or do public speaking, because for some reason in my head I felt that to do a talk you'd have to be the uber expert on something. You'd have to be, you know, pretty high up in your career and, I don't know, like really acknowledged as being the best at something to do public speaking. So when I first did some talks, it was the most unnerving thing, and I don't particularly like public speaking. And I realised that it's so important as a sector. We need more storytellers, because everybody loves a story, right? And that's how people are inspired to climb the ladder, to learn new skills, to think of approaching something in a different way. And I would genuinely say to people as words of wisdom is we need to hear opinions and perspectives from people at all walks of their journey. So from people who've just got into the industry, or maybe sidestepped or retrained, or returners who've come back after a career break, and you know, the sort of doubts that they might have had getting back into it.
I think it's being honest, isn't it, about those stories, and being really, I guess, transparent about your experiences and how you found it. And I think that's what I love so much about the podcast, is that I get to hear different women's stories and hope that it might inspire someone else to kind of give it a go, and or speak to someone and reach out and have a chat and find out how you can get involved. And
warts and all, that it is, you know, it shouldn't be just effectively like a social media of your highlights and all the good things.
Agreed.
But to actually be honest and explain, you know, some of the challenges you've had as well. But I genuinely think, as a word of wisdom, is have a go at public speaking. There is so many meetups here in the city who are crying out for speakers, and they desperately want speakers. You'd be speaking to a really enthusiastic group of people who just want you to succeed. And the more you do it, the easier it gets and the more you enjoy it. So take a leap.
And then you become a seasoned pro like yourself. I've heard you speak a couple of times. She makes up she's not confident with it.
But I think I think what you see and what I feel are two different things, right? And I think anybody who says to you, even the most experienced speaker will say to you, they still go, I'm still nervous every single time I go on stage.
Because you care though, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's, I think the nerves that, you know, are a good thing.
Yeah, I think so. I agree.
Fear is your ally, one of my friends said, and I think that's kind of true. And like I say, it's a hell of an adrenaline rush as well. In the minute you do that first talk and you get off stage, your blood's kind of coursing, you are full of beans, and you're so excited, and then you think, well, I can do this again.
You feel like them rock stars that used to photo.
Yeah, that's probably the best way of analysis. You know, I every time I'll go up on a stage now, I'll think, this is my Glastonbury.
Yeah, you are me. Good for you, amazing. Well, thank you very much for coming on and sharing your story.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's been fantastic speaking with you. Are you happy for people to reach out? What's the best way for people to get in contact? Via LinkedIn, Twitter?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So LinkedIn, Twitter. I'm Unharmonic on Twitter, or Empower with Tech. I'm definitely on LinkedIn. And, you know, if people have felt inspired after this, reach out to Sky's Get Into Tech programme.
Yeah, definitely.
It's an absolutely free 3-month coding course for females. We have the returner scheme open to men and women to get them more back into the industry. And one of the other things I'd shout about is Sky also have this thing called Women in Tech Scholars,
right,
where we award 5 women a £25,000 bursary and a year's worth of mentoring to develop an idea that they've had.
Wow, that's amazing.
So this year we've had everything from a lady who has got, she wants to build an agri-tech product,
right,
to protect cattle from being stolen, through to a lady who's developed a gator watch, which is a sort of a trackable watch you can put on a child, so if a child gets lost somewhere that you can find them. So to a lady who is developing an amazing game for children to get them to talk a lot more about their mental health and their emotions, and you know, any concerns they're having. So the ideas are so broad. That's really cool. But yeah, so check out Women in Tech Scholars
Loads
as well.
Loads of great stuff going on. Perfect. Well, feel free to get into touch with Natasha if you've got any questions. And just want to say a massive thank you for coming on the show, and very much thank you for listening, everyone. We'll see you next week.